Hello and welcome to another weekly update. I really hope you're doing well. Welcome to the start of another week. Plenty of interesting things to talk about this week as well. So let's start it off with a blog post that I put out in the week, actually quite close to last week's update, but it didn't quite make the cut because I was trying to do everything at the same time. And this is around the Microsoft Teams APIs and the Graph APIs that support Microsoft Teams, and specifically some of those APIs that are used to export data, either data in bulk or via change notifications. And the big news is that for these kind of export APIs, Microsoft is going to start charging for them. So kind of big departure from the other kind of APIs. So this is where it gets a bit confusing. So there are what Microsoft calls sometimes transactional APIs. So for your create, read, update, delete around Teams and channels and messages and so forth, those things remain free. And there will always be a way, right now, there is always a way to get the data out of Graph. These are more about the kind of bulk APIs. So there are specific export APIs designed to export data in bulk. And there's also change notifications to be told when new chats and channels happen in bulk. So that's where that charging structure comes in. Now, this is relatively complicated, this charging structure. The big takeaway is that nothing changes right now. A lot of these changes are announced, but without any go-live dates. So there's some kind of adjustment process and an adjustment time to happen first. All of the information was kind of scattered across a number of different pages, and I've tried to bring it all together in one blog post. So you can go and look at that blog post now. I'll put a link to it in the description. There's a few things to note. So this is the export APIs, the ones they went into beta at Ignite 2020, and then also the change notification subscriptions to retrieve chat and channel messages. So if you use either of those, this will affect you. Charging. So there's two different models, and I go through the details here. There's a Model A and a Model B. Put really, really simply, Model A gives you some free capacity, there's a limit, but it's because you've got an E5 license. So if you've got an E5 license, you can use this Model A, and you get basically a bunch of capacity included, and then after that you pay on a consumption model. Model B is if you can't do that and you're purely consumption model. The other thing to consider is that actually Model A is limited to certain types of applications. So just because all your users have got E5 doesn't necessarily mean you can use Model A. You have to have your application needs to be a security or a compliance application. Otherwise, if it's anything else like exporting, for instance, like for backup, then it's Model B. And that is pure consumption. So every message gets charged, every notification gets charged. I put in some calculations with the pricing. Again, that's taken from the current state of pricing. That might change. You should check it. So what happens today? What happens right now? I've covered that right at the end because it's kind of a big deal. Right now, nothing happens. There's a 6-month grace period. I've just noticed a typo in my blog post I need to go and correct. There is not a 6-month grace period. There's a 6-month grace period. However, that's for kind of admins to sort out which users should have E5 so they can get covered by that Model A capacity. There is no firm start date for the consumption charging of Model B and the overage charging for Model A. I guess at some point Microsoft is going to announce that, but to date they've just said not yet. I think somewhere they said enabled in calendar year 2022. So we've got a while probably before this comes out. We've got at least 2 months. So there's lots and lots to go through there. I don't want to read out the whole blog post on this video, but go check out that blog post, check out the detail, especially if you plan to use the export APIs. If you are using the export APIs, if you're using the change notifications, go and check. It's not all change notifications that are impacted by this. It's some of them. So depending on what you do, you may or may not be impacted. So there's work to do there to figure out basically if you're going to fall under this new charging regime, and if you are, what you need to do about it to prepare for it. Okay, let's go look at something else. Microsoft Graph developer blog post has a quite a short little blog post. It's four lines long, and this is concerning the case settings resource, which is currently in beta, but the big thing is that right now it's only called settings, and they're renaming it to be called case settings. So that is going to impact on probably everyone's code who's using this. So if you're using the Graph API for eDiscovery, the one that's currently in beta, the eDiscovery API, just be aware that the structure, if you like, of the data you're going to get back is changing. It's going to roll out from tomorrow as I record this. So your applications may be impacted by this, and this is kind of all like, it's not super unexpected. It's part of the fun of being on beta. We accept that these things may change over time. It makes complete sense the reason they're doing it, because there's lots of name conflicts. I guess the word settings is very overloaded, so calling it case settings makes a lot more sense, and it better describes what's happening as well. So this is all good. It's just obviously a bit bumpy if you're using the beta API right now. If you're using this eDiscovery API, you're gonna have to go and make some changes as that change rolls to your tenant. So it might not be immediately obvious when it happens, but if your code starts breaking, this is one thing to go and look at to see if you're impacted by this. Okay, we've got another blog post on the Teams developer blog, and this is all for cloud storage partners. So cloud storage partners are specific partners who allow customers to work with Office files and documents and folders that live in their own cloud. So, for instance, like Dropbox or Box, or any of those, where your files live elsewhere other than in OneDrive or SharePoint. They live in another provider, but they're accessible via Office 365. And so Microsoft have made some new integration points available for developers in these cloud storage partners, and specifically that's around co-authoring in Office. So where you've got this co-authoring experience that you've probably seen now in things like Word and Excel and PowerPoint, where multiple people can edit documents. What happens to those edits? What happens to saving those edits? Well, now if this document lives in a third-party store, a cloud store, those edits will automatically be stored. There's a process to ensure, and there's an integration to ensure that can happen. And the other thing is around kind of bringing like storage location data into Teams. So in Teams, where you go to attach files, by default, the little attachment icon will default to OneDrive and your OneDrive store. So this integration enables partners to flip that to their own store. So that becomes the customer default, which completely makes sense if across your tenant, for instance, users are storing their data in some other location. On Citrix or like Box or Dropbox, as I said, or whoever else, it completely makes sense that becomes the default for customers then, rather than having customers be presented with a default that isn't actually where all their files are. That is obviously confusing. So this is good changes to see. It's really good to see Microsoft opening up and not being very closed book about the integrations there and the way that they're I think it's no surprise, Microsoft would probably like all the files to live in OneDrive, but I think they get that for some organizations and for some workloads and some scenarios, that doesn't always make sense, and other options are available. So it's good to see Microsoft lean into that and say, okay, well, we recognize that, and the most important thing here is giving users the best experience. And this is definitely one of those areas where users will benefit from having the nicest experience here with the integration. Okay, I think that's it for new news. We've got a couple of interesting things coming up. We've got Ignite coming up fairly soon now, I think beginning of November. And we've got another conference coming up at the end of this week, South Coast Summit. I did a Know Before You Go video. I'll put a link to that in as well at the end of all the other links I've talked about today. It's a Know Before You Go, just covering the dates, where you get the tickets from, what you need to know about COVID, when it starts, when it finishes, what tickets you should get, and all the rest of it. So if that sounds useful, go and check that out, because it's got all the information you need in it, and it's only 4.5 minutes long. So you can go and watch that now if you want. Anyway, that's everything from me, I think. Whatever it is you're doing this week, it's a busy one for me, certainly, but I hope it's a productive one for you. And whatever else is you're doing, have a great week, and I will talk to you again next time.